Attack. When I think of attack,
Were
I think of
police
assaulting.
officers attacked on that day?
There was physical violence outside the Capitol that day.
But the Capitol Police weren't attacked?
So
What is it about that word that so troubles you?
It's not that I'm troubled by it. The term attack to me seems to imply like there was a coordinated effort to attack specific things.
Let me ask you.
There was physical violence associated with protest
I regard
activity at the
these
Capitol.
kinds of questions as a test of your prospective independence. And so far, I think you're failing that test.
Okay.
And I hope my colleagues will agree that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice should recognize reality and facts for what they are and be willing to call them out for what they are. Let me ask you, can you assure me, if you're confirmed, that your office will conduct a thorough investigation into allegations that Director Patel engaged in drinking and absences that have interfered with his ability to do his job?
What I can commit to is to assess the allegations, run them through the analysis that we do, and we're going to decide whether or not to open up a case. And we'll see if there's work to do in that arena.
Will you commit that you will complete the audit and inquiry that has begun into the concealment of the Epstein files? You'll recall that Senator Murkowski and I wrote you asking for the audit. You
We're going
agreed
to
do
finish.
it.
We'll finish our audit of the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
When will it be done?
My goal is 1 year from when we announced. That is a goal. We're going to push for that. Obviously, there's things that could pop up on occasion that slow things down, but we're going to push through that as well. Our goal is to be as efficient and as accurate as possible in that audit.
Will you agree to engage in investigation of the retaliatory firings of agents at the FBI?
Again, what I will do is we'll assess whether or not there's an arena for there to take action.
Will you
as we have
respond
done
to
historically.
that question after you review it, if you're confirmed?
I'm happy to talk to your office after we've reviewed and analyzed and assessed those cases.
And what about
allegations.
loyalty tests at the FBI? Will you review and investigate the use of loyalty tests there?
Again, we'll assess all allegations and we'll run them through our process and see if there's work for us to do there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Professor Wilson, you and I talked in the office some about, normally you don't think of the archivist as being a really controversial position, but there was a controversy in recent years talking about whether the archivist had the power to enroll or certify that an amendment to the Constitution had occurred, particularly with the ERA. The debate was over, I think the enrolling document or the initiating document had a timeline. Some of the states approved it outside the timeline. Some of the states had taken away theirs. We asked the previous archivist, and she answered that she did not have the power to make that decision or to say the ERA had passed. Do you agree with that opinion, or just give me your opinion on that?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. The ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, was passed back in 1972. The proposing resolution, which had a number of procedural requirements for the amendment to be considered ratified, included a deadline for ratification of 7 years. That deadline passed, and a number of states continued to vote to ratify after the deadline. A number of states rescinded their vote previously to ratify. This question came before the Archivist of the United States, who I imagine shares my view that it's unfortunate that the Archivist should ever be in the position to settle constitutional controversies. But in this case, the Archivist agreed with, who was appointed, by the way, by President Biden, and whose President Biden's Justice Department argued that it had not been ratified because of the deadline that had passed. She agreed with that decision and said she could not certify it for legal, judicial, procedural reasons. The deputy archivist, who was a career civil servant, agreed with that opinion. They stated their opinions publicly. I intend I agree with their opinion, and I intend to stick with it. Thank you.
The other issue you and I talked about is I'm interested in reading the classified annex to the Church Committee report from the 1970s. It just goes to how, you know, the overclassification thing, and I don't know that you'll have the power to help me, but I'd just like to hear on the record that things that are 50 years old that the law allows you to declassify, that you will pursue declassification within the law.
Right, thank you, Senator. Well, the National Archives is charged with collecting, processing, and making available to the American public, to researchers, to the government, the records of the national government. Those records obviously include both classified and unclassified documents. There's a process for dealing with both those kinds of documents. That some documents are classified is a product of agency decisions and congressional decisions. The archivist can be a nudge, I suppose, and try to get action taken to declassify documents that are wrongly classified. And there are many of them, I understand. So I'd be happy to work with you, Senator, with your team, to see if we can advance the declassification of the church documents.
Mr. Gallo, I commend you for your optimism that the post office can be fixed. We should put that and frame that. I hope you're right, but it's looked for 30 years like an unfixable problem. We're going to have the Postmaster General come in the next couple of weeks, and what I've asked him to present to us is, if you could fix it, what will you do? Because most of the things to fix it are either unpopular, everybody wants to mail, at least if not once a day, twice a day, if not 5 days, 6 days. So nobody wants to give up anything, but something has to give. A big part of the cost is 80% of the cost of delivering the mail is labor cost. In UPS, which is unionized, but it's not a government union, it's a private union, it's about 50% cost for labor. FedEx, which is non-unionized, it's about 38%. So that gives you an example of one of the big problems we face. I think another big problem, we'll go over this with him as well, is just insourcing versus outsourcing. DOJ decided he'd add 120,000 employees. Government employees cost more than private employees. They're not as good because they don't have a profit incentive. And so the bigger the post office gets, the more money they will lose. I thought DOJ would understand that. He never understood it and got worse. And the losses got worse. They were losing $4 billion a year 10 years ago. Now we're losing $9 billion a year. So you're welcome to comment that. I'll have a specific question. But if you have ideas for it, we would love to hear your ideas on how we're going to fix the post office.
As a businessman, it's hard for me to understand how that the Postal Service has $80 billion in revenue, has the network to deliver mail directly to households all over this country and business entities, has the ability to borrow up to $15 billion, and you're losing money. It's crazy. And why I think it's fixable is because if you're losing $10 billion, you have to raise the revenue by $5 billion, and you have to reduce your cost by $5 billion. That all has to be looked at. You have the Delivery for America program that was established in March of 2021, and I read it, and many of the points that they made sense to me, but you're 6 years into this program. You're supposed to have reduced make it a break even over a 10-year period. You're 6 years into it, and you're still losing the same amount of money. So obviously, all of those points that were made in the Delivery for America program has to be looked at. What's working, what's not working. And from there, you have to really dive into why it's not working and change it. And obviously, the workforce at over 600,000 people is too high. And you need to figure out who's performing, who's coming to work and who's not, who's getting paid and not coming to work. All of this has to be looked at.
All I would say is,
I think it's fixable.
All I would say is be bold. Trimming around the corners isn't going to do it. So be bold, and we have to have, we have to try to fix it. We have to try to do something better. Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome to the panel, everyone. For those who are seeking to be on the Board of Governors for the Postal Service. You've heard bipartisan interest in getting this right, and